Today, we have the great pleasure of having Gina Thésée, who will talk about the quest for ECO global citizenship and transformative education. So before giving her the mic, I just want to present to you briefly about her background and all the projects that she has driven so far. So Gina Thésée is a professor from the didactic department at UDM. She is co-holder of the UNESCO Chair of Research in Education and Transformative Perspectives. For a long time, she has been collaborating on works and activities of the special teams of UNESCO's teacher teams. Her research focuses on science, education science, intercultural education, environmental education, eco-citizenship education, inclusive education, and transformative education. She specializes in college professor training, and she focuses on critical pedagogy, critical epistemology, and she has published numerous scientific articles in these domains. She has directed the post-secondary degree at UQAM, and she is affiliated with the Ministry of Education of Quebec. Before undergoing her academic career, she has taught science of nature in 2 distinct schools with the Montreal School Commission. In 2006, she was honored during the Black History Month of Montreal. Personally, I also have to add that Gina's charisma and inspiration makes for such an authentic speaker. So Gina, so glad to welcome you. Thank you so much, dear Julie. Without further ado, I'd like to share my screen.
Alors bonjour, bon après-midi.
So hello, good afternoon, good evening to all of you in this room, depending on where you are in the planet at the moment. Thank you again, Julie, for this great introduction and for this very flattering introduction. So let us begin. The title of my presentation has slightly changed, so here is the new title to my presentation. L'éducation. So transformative and participatory education to global citizenship. So the last 2 conferences we heard from Paul Carr and Michael Oxman yesterday showed us how wrong things have gone in the world. Things have gone very badly. What's going on? And we can actually even say that our world has become a dystopia, whether our past or our present. Our present tense is a dystopia. So no matter where you are right now, please take 20 seconds of silence for each of these 20 years of the 20th century who has been lived out as a true dystopia. So 21 seconds of silence.
Et voilà, je vais commencer ma présentation maintenant. J'ai voulu rendre hommage à toutes ces personnes.
So I want to honor all the people that are still suffering again and again in the world.
François Rabelais, il y a
François Rabelais, it's 500 years ago, said if we have conscious with the soul and the spirit. So I don't know if you know Alpha Blondi. It's from Côte d'Ivoire, and he's taking back this quote from Rabelais. So he's adding science to the quote. So science without science will ruin the arms or the
et je me méfie de la politique, armes chimiques ou bactériologiques, défie toutes les lois de la logique. Je vous dis science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme. Science sans conscience n'est que ruines et larmes. Devant l'escalade de la violence, l'homme découvre son impuissance, appelle à l'aide le maître du temps. C'est un SOS si tu m'entends, je vous dis science, oh yeah. Sans conscience, n'est que ruine de l'âme. Science, sans conscience, n'est que ruine de l'âme. Les océans sont radioactifs, avec les missiles qui réfléchissent, la terre entière s'asphyxie. C'est un vrai suicide collectif. Oh yeah. Science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme. Science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme. Je ne m'y connais pas en balistique et je me méfie de cette politique, armes chimiques ou bactériologiques, défie toutes les lois de la logique. Je vous dis science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme. Science sans conscience n'est que ruines et larmes.
Et pourtant, cette chanson,
and even with this song, we still sing it this century. And what's so important for the 21st century of education for UNESCO is that education is a treasure. And in the same report that UNESCO made, that Jacques Delors wrote, he wrote a text when it talked about the education and the utopia of education. And despite this education that we hope for, we still find ourselves in this situation. So I would like to start my presentation with an inspiring person, Maya Angelou. She's someone who inspires me a lot. So I'd like to share a quote from Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, what you did, but they'll never forget what you did, how you made them feel. So that's a little bit what I wanted to share with you for listening to the Alpha Blondi song, to make you feel something. So something beyond just knowledge and knowing, but like the feeling. So I'm gonna go along with the transformative education and emancipatory education. So I want to explain to you what I understand by this type of transformative and emancipatory education. So this idea, Educere. So I don't know if you know the term, but I'm going to explain it to you a little bit and to share why I will replace education by Educere, transformative and emancipatory education. So just to start, another reflection, another piece of art that I made that's part of 4 elements that you can see. The 4 fundamental elements, we have earth, water, air, and fire. So I hope before Julie does. So transformative and emancipatory education, a lot of people ask like why wall, why this way to end the word, because sometimes we say in French transformateur ou transformatrice. So why? Because it equates transformative with emancipative in the end of the word. And so this is part of an organic internal process that is not imposed by any external forces. It's not a result of a domination or an oppression. So transformative education comes from the person themselves or from the communities themselves and not from external forces. And so why transformative and emancipatory? Because it's 2 sides of the same coin. So when we talk about transformative education, we talk about collective spheres and communities. And then it also falls in the context of democracy. So when we talk about emancipatory education, and that talks about the individual sphere, the personal and the sphere of people. So when I write emancipatory, so this is just how I write it, as you see on the slide. So because of the epistemology of the word, I want to remind you that is to take away the hand that oppresses me, that aggresses me, that hurts me. So it's to take it away, this hand. So that's why I like the epistemology and how to write the word this way. So transformative education is really about our vision right now at the UNESCO Chair. And democracy, which is not normative democracy, but a democracy in process and construction and co-construction and solidarity. So with social justice, with inclusion, diversity, equality, and understanding. And so this kind of education, emancipatory education, really is important, that this eco-citizenship, that we want it to be as big and as open as possible to be world citizenship. And so is this eco-world citizenship. And we need to always think about the ecological aspect of it. So we can't just be citizens of the world, but we need to be eco-citizens. And this is an essential part of the process that we want to work in. And why we talk about global citizenship, we are not talking about globalization. So often it's like, oh no, people like to make a link that you're talking about globalization. No, no, no. This citizenship that is global make reference to a notion of globalism. And so using this compass, so it's really a opposite from globalization. It's the opposite of globalization. So I hope we understand each other on this front. So education has 2 epistemological roots from Latin. And they give 2 very drastic different views of education. So we have Educare, and then we have Educere. So Educare, so is to be educated. So let's say you're a vase, a vessel, And so this idea that you have to fill this vessel. So this vessel references something that's not alive. It's a thing. It's an object. It's a passive object. And so then we act on the vessel. It receives the force that is inside of us. But with Educere, so it's about a thing, and it can be a plant or a tree. So it's so to follow it and be with it in its transformation. So it's a living thing. It's an analogy that is a subject and not an object. So it is a being, and it has self-determination. And it's the transformation of this subject, this being, can only come from itself, from its own power. So this is why I chose Educere and not the other type of education, Educare. So I hope we can all follow this line. So Educere, so we talk about the human. So we've always said since we were young that we are animals, we're from the animal kingdom. But I would like you to consider also that we're from the animal, the vegetal or the vegetation kingdom. So from a forest, we're not alone, we're with other trees. So we're trees in a forest. So we have another Raoul Duguay, a Quebec singer. It's like every tree has its own breath, voice, music, and song. So to educate is to cultivate our tree of life. It's to dialogue with other tree of lives around us. So Educere. So what are the values that are close to this concept? So instead of picking 1, 2, 3, or 4, let's pick a constellation of values that are social and at this also environmental, because we're talking about plants. So we want to make sure, so we want to put, first of all, like at the center in big letters, peace. And to echo this whole dystopia that we're living in, that we find ourselves right now. And before and now, and even in the 21st century, we were hoping that education would have brought us to a better world. So we're talking about social justice, environmental justice, equality between genders, the human rights, so etc. So you see this as a constellation of human values. So after we've looked at this and have understood that we're living in this dystopia, we'd like to see a paradigm change. But this paradigm change might be too radical. So now, rather than paradigm change, I'm talking about dilation, which I think is necessary for the education of the 21st century, because the subject who's being educated is still there to learn, who's interacting to learn, but is still doing it alone in this individualist way. So then let's look at the cognitivist school. So in Quebec and other places in the world, it's a current in the education sphere. And all over the world, we find this type. So we find constructivism, socio-constructivism, cognitivism, and the exclamation is put on critical thinking. So imagine to develop someone's critical thinking, but without taking this person also to develop a feeling of solidarity or understanding of that. Imagine what would that do to you? So how can you have the critical thinking without a sense of solidarity? So I think we need to go towards a humanist socio-critical school where we put all the humanism forward and takes into account the socio-ecology and all the threats on the environment and all the climate crisis and the health crises that we're living. So we need this socio-ecological, so it's a socio-ecological school to go push even farther to really be able to look at a socio-ecological transition. And tomorrow in our conference, our Thursday conference, we'll be talking about this socio-ecological transition. So we have to develop this social and critical consciousness towards the ecological and sociological world citizenship. So we can't just leave the cognitivist school of thought behind. We need it, but we need to bring it forward with other perspectives. So education on the 21st century has been really printed or influenced hard by the cognitivist school. So this idea from Descartes is like, I think, therefore I am. So this world, I think, it functions more with Educare, the whole idea to create cognitive subjects that can perform, and within thinking about to know and to have, but this also finds itself in the accumulation, the capitalization, a colonial, racist, sexist system that leads to feminicide, genocides. So I really feel we need to change this paradigm or dilate this paradigm. So I think, therefore I am, but not I am because you are, and I am because we are. So you can see this is not at all the same perspective on education. So we want to educate towards like democracy, education, and maybe you're cognitively performative, but it's also, do you have a social consciousness? Do you have a consciousness about solidarity? Can you see complex thought and to think about, like, to refuse this kind of globalization and exploitation? So you would say maybe this transformation is already going, right? So we're seeing that something is starting to move, something's starting to come up. So we're starting to see ruptures in facing all these different violences. So we have to take the who can speak up and who can take the space and the voices that are normally stifled. And we need to break with who's making the histories. So this is something we have to deconstruct and reconstruct and construct together. Even doing it with communities that are normally erased. So on all these levels, sociological, economic, and all this. So how do we do this rupture? It's mobilization in social movements, in actions. We have to move.
We have to break with this feeling of powerlessness. You know, power, you can learn it. It's alienating, it's paralyzing. But now we are reappropriating this power on ourselves, both collective and individual. So there is a real hope. And with my dear colleague, Julie, who is also an optimist, we have had numerous talks on this subject. And I do want to be an optimist because we can see this multiple break with the multiple sources of oppression and violence. So Educere, the tree of life, this concept that we can use to talk about transformatory and liberating education. So there is another song that I won't play today, but you will have access to the song when you connect to the material after today's presentation on the different platforms that the symposium will make available to you. So participatory, liberating, and transformative education from this concept of Educere. So if you can recall, Educere refers to the tree of life. So let's ask ourselves, what does this education need and what are the fundamental basic needs of trees? Earth, water, air, and fire. So please follow me in this small trail where we'll meet these four elements of earth, water, air, and fire. Come with me. So I'm inspiring myself from these four elements: educere, transformative, educative, from Terra, Gaia, Oikos concepts, who all mean the home in which we live. Terra, Gaia is Mother Earth. Helios is the sun, the energy. And so I go back to these four elements here to see that the air, water, air, and fire are all part of nature. And so this is a representation of Pachamama encompassing these four fundamental aspects. Educere, transformative, and emancipatory. Those are four elements that I am trying to zoom for you here. So let's start to focus with the material elements so we can move towards energy. So earth is associated to the body, the human senses, and we know that the body is also the being's temple, and so to not integrate a consideration about the body is unhealthy in an education perspective. So earth is the solidity, it is the grounding of the being, that place in which we take root and where we find our food, our nutriments. It is the matrix. Earth represents the political dimension of Educere. Political in the sense of police, from the Greek polis, so the city, the place in which we develop, work, and love. And so the political dimension means that education is a political concept, and so we have to nurture it and we have to care about it in a political way, meaning in a perspective that is meant to take care of the affairs of the city. So there are two paths to undertake. Why two paths? Because Earth in itself does have limitations, and with those limitations comes duty. Educere is a transformative education that also aims to be an artistic education. And so to avoid focusing solely on the cognitive performance, we have to leave some space to the sensitive being, which requires this earth in which to anchor itself. And if we try to focus on the artistic parts of life, then we can think about gardening and artistic creation and expression. And now if we go towards water, emotion, flexibility, fluidity, it is the ethical component of Educere. Water represents the ethical aspect. because now we're talking about relationships, our bonds to others. And water is a fluid element, so it brings this idea of free circulation, exploration, meeting others. It's dynamic, it's always in movement. So it is a will to become and to be and to act. So what artistic pieces can we think of here? So, you know, we're talking about movement and rhythm, songs and music and dancing, choreographies, movement. It is also the theater arts. So educating ourselves to the emotional parts of ourselves brings educated to reintegrate this creative part into our process. And now air. Air is the intellectual part, it's the thought process, it's this gassy energy, the breathing, the reading of the world, this rereading of the world. It's a deconstruction of knowledge. It's the epistemology part of the social critic. So we have to deconstruct the toxic notions that we are operating under so that we may build transformative knowledge, emancipatory knowledge again, from ideas and stories, new dreams, new friends. And as Jacques Delors was saying, the from utopia, we need utopia in education. And if we don't have it, then what are we doing there? So knowledge, skill, knowing how to be, how to evolve, starting from literary or artistic or material pieces of art. And so this deconstructing of skills and knowledge, it's like if we realize that our toxic notions is giving way to the being's alienation, bringing a feeling of powerlessness, that's not education. That's miseducation. And so the element of air in Educere brings us to deconstruct these toxic knowledges and skills, whether social pathologies like racism and sexism. These social pathologies are integrating toxic knowledge in us. And we are infected by them, and all our lives are affected by these social political toxic notions. And so Educere is a social critical perspective who is aiming at deconstructing these toxic knowledges. And it's not just about deconstructing them, but also reconstructing them and co-constructing them, meaning together, so that we may deconstruct hegemonia, which is imposing knowledges and skills on to others, but without their participation and at their own loss. And now fire, that's the spiritual quest, the quest for meaning. So fire is energy, passion, spirituality, you know, this search for meaning. It's the ecologic dimension because that's what brings us to bond with nature. We are nature. Remember, we are trees. And so that's what is connecting us to the natural world. We are social beings, but our social life is embedded in a larger society composed of a larger world, which is ecological. So the word echo comes from the Greek word oikos meaning the home where we share life together, in which we inhabit the world together. And so the ecological dimension is aiming at developing our power to be, to act, and to be imbued with this feeling of power that can bring us to act. Power. So what are the creative artistic pieces that can be made in this context of fire? So, it can be life projects. I'm saying, I'm asking those as questions because I'm really hoping that you can think about this autonomously. Maybe you have artistic pieces that you can associate to your own background, your own Educere. For each of these 4 elements, you may think of particular pieces of art. So now I want to suggest something a bit more personal. You might say, oh, Gina, this metaphor with these 4 elements, what are you going at? But how can we translate this theory concretely? So let me present my own analysis. So here we have the element of earth. We have the myth of Gaia, Mother Earth, which is associated to a song of Émilie Michel called L'odeur of de ma terre. So this is really speaking to the political dimension of the Educere, meaning that we are present to the world, to the city, whether that means the neighborhood, the school, the country, the world. We are in presence at the heart of the city. And the people who have inspired me, so the people who have really nurtured this earth side of my Educere that I'm trying to construct with others. So I want to start with Christiane Taubira, whom you probably know already. She has written extensively. And she is mostly known for the Taubira Loi, who is acknowledging slavery as a historical fact, and Christiane Taubira is claiming that she is of the earth, and she has a political thought and discourse that she constantly translates into actual political action, and she is very inspiring, very engaged, and she is struggling to claim herself as a part of the world, of the earth. And you probably know Frantz Fanon with his books Damnés de la Terre, Peau Noire, Masque Blanc, bringing us to reflect about our ways to be in the world, to anchor ourselves into the earth, and about the ways that we think about the violences that we must endure, namely colonial violence. And a lot of struggles against alienation are finding their strength in Frantz Fanon's thinking. Angela Davis is also probably a name you know. She's known for her implication in Black liberation movements, and she really recalls the importance of intersectionality, so between women, race, and class. Black feminism, the struggle for the Black civil rights of women. Aimé Césaire is also affiliated with Earth. Uh, so his speech on colonialism and the way he has deconstructed colonialism as a structure so that he may understand and deconstruct all the little folds and nicks that make colonialism possible. So I have some quotes that you may see here, and some books from these authors, and I hope you have the chance to dive into these writings a bit more extensively so that you may identify the links that are possible to draw between these elements. Vandana Shiva is also affiliated to the earth element. She's a physicist coming from India, fighting from Monsanto, Coca-Cola, and Bill Gates for the preservation of the earth, of the germs, and she's also interested in ecofeminism. She's associating nature to the woman figure and claims that if we want to protect nature, we have to protect women and vice versa. Women must be able to stand up, speak up, and denounce machismo, which is a founding piece of extractivism, colonialism, imperialist mentalities. James Baldwin, whom you probably have heard of. You absolutely have to read some James Baldwin. So Citizen of the World, this is some real eye-opening writings, his book Être noir dans un pays de blancs, so being black in a white country, where he talks about how his body is evolving in this context where he is seen as an other, as a minority. So now the water element, the ethical dimension, I chose the song River from Geoffrey Arema. You might know it. So who has educated me and inspired me? Rigoberta Menchú, you might have heard about her before. Maya Quiché. So she's from the Maya Quiché people of Guatemala. She's a feminist activist for peace. She has received the Peace Nobel Prize in '92. She was a witness to impossible violence in the struggle for liberation, and still she has always fought for peace. Ricardo Petrella is the ambassador for water. He wrote the Manifesto for Water in the 21st century. For Petrella, education is a trap when it becomes merchandised, mercantile, and representing a meritocracia. And so he is inviting us to lift this trap on education. Gisèle Halimi has passed away very recently. From Tunisia and with a French background, she has struggled all her life for women's rights. She was known as a irrespectful lawyer, but she was acting the way she had to if she wanted to lead the struggles that she had to lead. She needed to have this irreverentious approach. Edouard Glissant and Patrick Chamoiseau, globalization with the notion of international relationships, the politics of collaboration. And when we talk about global citizenship and eco-global citizenship, I'm referencing not globalization, but the global effect of our relationships, of our political relationships. And so if those are themes that are interesting to you, please don't hesitate to go and find their writings. Toni Morrison, she was congratulated with the Nobel Prize of Literature in '93. Her writings are very harsh, but they speak about the experiences of Black African American experiences. And now Jacques Roumain, who is a writer from Haiti, very involved in this water dimension. So in all that it links to love, to community, to learning, to spirituality and emotion. And so at his time, he was already an eco-citizen with his novel Gouverneur de la Rosée. So the air element now, speaking to the ethics parts of Educere. So as we were saying earlier, a science without conscience is just the ruin of the soul. Françoise Bergès, feminist activist, decolonial activist, to decolonize spirits and the world. She is inviting us to rediscover a spiritual part of our struggle so that we may understand sexist violence from a multicultural, multi-transversal feminist perspective.
The Sousa So he invites us to denounce and refuse the hegemony of the North in the whole realm of thought and reflection. And he's making us think about the Eurocentric hegemonical way of thinking, and to denounce political injustice. So he's inviting us to a certain academic activism to value more the epistemologies of the South, of the global South, bell hooks. So this is Afrofeminism. She is Afrofeminism. And we know that feminism doesn't necessarily include women of color or Black women. So it was so essential for bell hooks to create Afrofeminism for Black women. Stuart Hall made the whole theory of representation really important, so then we can deconstruct the representations of Black people in the medias. And it's also to stop the reproduction of all these toxic representations that are passed down from generation to generation that happen in the media. But maybe we think it's banal a bit, but no, it's a huge part of racism and recurring racism, and how systemic racism reproduces itself by negative representations in the media. So now we have the critical analysis. And so with my colleague Shirley Stanberg, who is really interested in the youth. So to value youth culture and the cultural production and the art production and empowerment of youth. And then we have Joel Kinchlow, who is also into a pedagogy and epistemology that's critical, and to really resist dominant powers. He's saying without this, in his pedagogy, we want to diminish and lessen human suffering, versus traditional pedagogies will push you to create more oppressions and suffering. So Linda Smith was to decolonize the methodologies that we used to do research, because these methodologies will perpetuate and reproduce and keep colonialism and the neo-colonialism that continues through research. So we invite you, Linda Smith, to be vigilant in the struggle. And then we have Edgar Morgan to think globally and in a complex manner. Now we have the fire element. So our Cher Innu, so Joséphine Bacon, you don't see me, you don't hear me, you don't listen to me, you don't talk to me. Just in this quote that she made, it says everything. And then there's Pierre Rabhi, is also a wise person who talks about a happy sobriety and who wishes a convergence of thought and consciousness. And even if he wanted to maybe be mistaken of our situation, this is a reality that's happening. So these are two wise people, Paulo Freire and Antonia Dalle. We heard from her yesterday. So her reflections are an act of love, and you're invited to be vigilant, because these struggles are here to stay, because all these social dynamics and pathologies are still there, so we have to remain vigilant. But still think about education as an act of love. And then we have Paulo Freire, who's a huge, important thinker in education, and that we have to denounce a bank style of education that we have. And really, it's about consciousness raising and the pedagogy of liberations. And then we have Arthur Lord and Martin Luther King. So the peace should be an energy to transform. And we have to commit ourselves to justice. And then Audre Lorde says rage can be an energy to transform as well. And as women, we have the right and the obligation to have rage. And for me as a woman, I do feel that, and that we need this as a transformative energy. So don't deny the rage. We can accept it and take it. And it's part of our transformative process. It is good to have rage, especially for women. So as you see, we find ourselves in 2021, almost at the end of this time where we're supposed to be noticing and guaranteeing social justice for the African and the whole and the Africans of the world, but no one knows about this Afro descent, and that this was what we were supposed to do, the decade for that. And then it was also, and now we're supposed to be the decade of Indigenous people. So I hope we will actually be living it this next year's. So the UNESCO proposition to have equal and fair education for everyone. So education in a conservative way is not a, oh, it's not, we're not just thinking about like in school and that it's just up until 18. It's an education that we can do throughout our life in this education conservatory, and how informal forms of education are unbelievable ways to learn. So there's formal education like school and university that can, that you can learn from the whole informal types of education, the community organizations, for example, and social and environmental organizations. So this parts of knowledge, and these are all agents of transformative knowledge. So formal education has interest to be inspired by these groups. So like Gramsci, I am pessimist in my spirit, but I stay optimistic in my heart. So we have these youth here, like Greta Thunberg, that you've probably heard of, Natasha Califontaine, a new poet that I adore. And you can see the titles of one of her books. She says, "Do not enter into my soul with your shoes on." And that can be the first phrase of an emancipatory education. Do not enter into my soul with your shoes on. And then we have Amanda Gallman, who's another person who's made us share so many touching moments and helped us to discover that there is hope. And then also in Chile, in America the Sur, there's Byron, whose youth was taking the lead to denounce and to reclaim a better education and social justice where he's situated. And I'd like to finish with two other people who are very close to me and my heart, two teachers or professors, Angelou Kiwe and George Day. I see them as two enlighteners or raisers of consciousness. And so here are their two books, and I hope you can maybe discover what they think and what they see as transformative and emancipatory education. She includes in her analysis of this type of education even a notion of spirituality. And so finally we have the good fairies of Educere. So I just call them good fairies. So Nicole is a professor at UQAM in intercultural education. And for Nicole, it's intercultural is not just education, it's something that she lives. It's a way of life. And she has a whole project and a program and a research project and to do mixing and setting up to do cultural exchanges or to be twins in this UNESCO chair. I think we can all do it now in this intercultural thought. Okay, and then we have Lucie Sauvé. So we're gonna listen and hear from her tomorrow morning in our conference. And she's going to encourage us to transform our relationships with ourselves and with our relationships with the other, to the relationship with the environment. So this model that Lucie Sauvé shares with us falls very well into this style of transformative education. So to wrap this all up, so Educere education, emancipatory education, is really a philosophy of the South, some from the Latin America and South Africa. So there's a buen vivir and Pachamama. So it invites us to have harmony, equilibrium, solidarity, to complement each other and to be creative. Ubuntu is not something is something that we appropriate. It's a philosophy from people from the south of Africa about interdependence, nonviolence, reconciliation, reciprocity. We need this in education. So now our possible phase for this type of emancipatory and transformative education is to be, I am because you are, I am because we are, and I am because we are all together, and I am because we are all together, the children of Gaia, holding this idea that we will live well together, that we have gratitude to Pachamama, and then we want to work together in a transformative and emancipative manner. I'd like to thank you very much. Thank you, Gina. I really didn't make a mistake saying that you would inspire us today. You're an incredible person. Such a huge and amazing woman with this spirit of sharing. And your vision that helps us see the world in a lucid manner, but in such an optimistic way at the same time. And your hope and your drive and this vision of utopia makes us travel. And so thank you so much. I look forward to the next 15 years of my life. So thank you so much. And so we had some questions that were popping up during our discussion. and the combustion of our spirits, or the fire and burning. So we see that the lucidity was not bringing us towards naivety, but in a possibility that we can reappropriate our power in this world. So I'm going to take a question. So in the academic sectors, do you think they will accept to follow this style of education, your transformative education? So thank you, Chantal, for the the question. I don't think so. No, there's always resistance, right? There's always this kind of discourse that we have to expect. So it shouldn't be a surprise. We have to expect to have resistance. Our presence in this world, this is the best that I have to do. I need to get invested, or that we invest in their mission and dialectics. So maybe where I will fail, other people will succeed. And even if I have the impression maybe that I failed, but maybe I created a little crack, and then other people will be able to break through and maybe keep on pushing this crack and making it bigger, and we'll be able to expand this small opening. So effectively, Chantal, often like you, I feel very discouraged, like this is not going to be possible. And we see more and more in these in the media discourses and everything, we are seeing the cracks to talking about anti-racism and equity, and in feminist culture. It's starting to be able to hit hard and denounce what's going on. So I really feel we have to let it go and invest in our missions and know that we're not alone no matter what. So thank you, Chantal. Thank you, Gina. That's once again a total inspiration for everyone. Sorry, we can't continue on with more questions because it's a break time and we need to give a chance for the next panelists and everything to get into their Zoom rooms. But I'm inviting you all at 1:30 to be able to join a Zoom room, to be able to discuss. And I keep on seeing all the messages in the chat of messages of love and thank you. So thank you so much, Gina. I just want to say thank you to all of you. And it was so nice coming together and having this time to reflect. I'm so touched. And you know, this notion of radical love that I was talking about from Paulo Freire and Antonio Gardner, just this effigy, sorry. But sadly, the word and the term radical is become negative. But radical just means to be at the root of something. So that's what I feel. And that's what I hope that you can also express. This idea of radical love goes to the root of our spirit, of who we are, our being. And I just want to say one more thing. Edouard Glissant told us that we are all the same through the roots. People want to make us believe that we don't have the same roots, and no, we can all be connected through our roots, like trees, but we then grow in our diversity from the trunk and the flowers and the branches and the leaves in our diversity. So I just want to say thank you from the hundreds of people that were here today, sending you much love. Take care.